Well, hello and welcome to another episode of More Perfect Marketing. My name is David Baer, and today we're going to be talking to a guy who, despite the name of his business, doesn't have such an ugly mug. He's the owner of Ugly Mug Marketing, Wayne Mullins. Wayne, welcome.
Thank you so much, David. And no, the business wasn't, despite popular belief, named after me.
So I am curious about the name of the business because, the first time it popped into my inbox, I thought back to this thing that I think you and I both know from the marketing world, whether it's, we talk about it for websites these days, but it was true in direct mail. Ugly converts. And we can explain what that principle means in a moment. But and so that's like the very first thing I thought, oh, that's an awesome name. But I'm sure that's not where the name came from. Where did it come from?
Super close, though. So the name actually comes from a gentleman of the name David Ogilvy. So people in the marketing world or advertising world are probably familiar with his name. David was the co-founder of Ogilvy and Mather. At one point, the largest ad agency in the world. To this day, I think they're still in the top 10. And rumor has it that David had this phrase that he would use in his offices as he would go around and evaluate different campaigns. And that was, I would rather an ad or a campaign that's ugly but effective than one that's beautiful and isn't. And so the name Ugly Mug Marketing is really just a play off of that exact principle. In the world that we live in, awards are this big thing. Lots of agencies go after and compete after these awards. And I really believe personally that those are a distraction from the core mission of any agency, which is results for the client. So long answer to the question, but it's comes from that exact same principle you were talking about. Ugly sells, ugly converts.
Absolutely. And for listeners who have heard more than one episode here, they know the name David Ogilvy because I've talked about him before. And there's a rumor, whether it's true or not, that the character Don Draper from Mad Men was partially based on David Ogilvy, although I don't think he had the suave good looks that the Brit had, quite the same looks. But anyway, I digress. Let's dive into a little of what you tend to focus on, and maybe we take a moment before we talk about your philosophy, your approach to working on a project with a client, attacking it, and those three magical questions that you attempt to answer. Talk a little bit about just the work that you do and who you work with.
Sure. Yeah, it's an interesting question that I get asked, David. It's like, who do you ideally work with? And over the years, we've received all types of advice, or I have at least, about you should niche down, you should find a certain vertical and go deep, and it makes your life so much easier if you do that. And the problem is, I get too bored too easily doing that, right? I love the novelty of working literally in a different industry throughout the day. But in an effort to satiate that question or give an answer to that question, kind of step back and really analyze all the clients we've worked with, and the ones we've been the most successful with. There's two common characteristics. Number one, they are entrepreneurial. So it could be nonprofit, it could be a church, it could be, you name the organization, but typically the people, the leaders in that organization are entrepreneurial in their thinking. And number two, they are growth oriented. In other words, they're not just happy with maintaining the status quo. And, the work we typically do centers around three core areas: web development, social media marketing, and then traditional marketing, for lack of a fancier term.
What would you include in traditional marketing?
In traditional marketing, we literally will do anything from television, radio, print, billboard. When I say traditional marketing, as opposed to the social media department, that is where we're coming in and literally just taking over their entire marketing department. So we don't start with a particular platform. We start with the strategy, the goals that they're after, what are they trying to accomplish, and work backwards from there.
Which brings us back to something we were talking about before we hit record, which is all about the strategic approach, and I think that was when I heard you use the term agnostic when it comes to platforms or solutions, and so we'll probably circle back to this point, but I do want to to get around to these three strategic questions, because I'm sort of curious what they are that you really focus on in helping transform a business's marketing. So you want to run us through that?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first question, the first place we love to begin, David, is with this. What results are your marketing efforts currently producing? Now, I know that sounds like a super simple question, but until we get people to actually look at the results that are coming out of this marketing system that they have, we cannot fix or correct or even implement new ideas or change things until we get people to acknowledge that there is a system in place. We love to say that the results that you're getting are a reflection of the system you have in place. So, terrible results, you've got something broken in your system, or maybe just a very terribly pieced together system. So that is the first place we love to begin, is we love to analyze and we ask that question. Let's look at the results that your system is actually producing, the marketing system that you have in place. What is it producing? And it's through those conversations that light gets shed on the reality that this system, it reminds me of the Winchester House. I don't know if you're familiar with that. I think it's called the Winchester Mystery House in California. It's the heiress to the Winchester Rifle Mansion. Her husband passed away, and then she inherited all this money, and she was told by a psychic that she needed to move west and to begin building a house and never stop building a house if she wanted the spirits of all the people who were killed by her husband's rifles to stop haunting her. And so she ended up just building this thing with stairs that lead nowhere, with rooms with no windows, and rooms with windows that look into other rooms. And that is how I would describe most people's marketing systems. It's just this hodgepodge of tactics that have been grabbed onto, pieced together, and then they're complaining that it's not working for some reason.
Well, and one would argue perhaps that that's not a system. It's a bunch of tactics that are probably unrelated to each other very often, because they're like as pretty much any business that's gone through this probably would identify themselves with is, well, let's go try this. Yeah, I didn't know, I didn't have any means of measuring success, and so I don't know if it worked or not. But I'm going to just say it didn't work. So let me go try this instead, right? You see that too, I'm assuming.
Yeah, absolutely. We call that the sales rep system. So, the business owner's busy. The advertising sales rep walks in the door and says, "Hey, guess what? We've got this great promo this month. Buy X package and we'll double it and triple it." And, as busy entrepreneurs, we're like, "Oh, that, I know I need to be focused on this marketing thing. That's great. Let's do it." And then to make matters worse, and I'm clustering myself in this category as an entrepreneur, to make matters worse, the rep says, "Well, what do you want to run? What do you want to do?" And we respond and say, "Oh, I really don't have time. Go put something together and bring it back and I'll look at it." And so we end up with this rep system pieced together, just like you were saying, no results. We're frustrated. They're frustrated. But again, it is a system. Our thinking has allowed us to produce this system, if you will. And I'm using air quotation marks here. It's a broken system. It's a weak system, but there's a system in place around our marketing. Do we like the results or not? That's the answer, or that's the question.
Well, the whole sales rep thing, I think, is the way that most business owners have been indoctrinated into the world of marketing or advertising. I call it the advertising industrial complex, because we've all kind of learned it based around these tactics. And who is typically talking directly to a business owner? We don't get agencies like you who are coming to business owners soliciting their business, saying, "I have a wealth of potential paths I could guide you down once we, pull back the curtain and see what you actually need," right? They get the newspaper, radio, Facebook ads specialist. It's knocking at their door, hitting them up on LinkedIn or wherever, saying, "I can help you get more leads." And that's what they hear, and they go, "Oh, I need that. And as you said, I don't have time. Go ahead and do it." So, all right, question number 2.
Yeah. Question number 2 is, what metrics actually matter as it relates to your marketing? What metrics actually matter as it relates to your marketing? Again, for us, this is a strategic question. This forces people that we're talking to shift their thinking from grabbing onto the next cool idea, the next thing the gurus are talking about, or the next thing the ad rep walks in and talks about. And instead, it forces them to actually think through, what are the true metrics, right, that matter to my marketing system? And so when we begin these conversations with people, we then can begin building backwards from the metrics that truly matter. And for us, because we work in both for-profit, not for-profit, and their end goals are different, between the organizations. We could easily say that money's the end goal for a for-profit, more profit, more revenue. For not-for-profit, whether that's more donations, more volunteers, whatever it may be. Mm-hmm. But we then force a step back below that and say, okay, the marketing system that we're going to create, the goal, the end result is that. But what are the actual metrics that you believe are important to get to that point? Again, it shifts us out of the day-to-day. It forces us to think more systematically about what we're trying to produce.
So I want to dive into metrics. My business partner is a metrics geek, and I'm a copywriter. I don't really focus on numbers. It's like my brain hurts, but I understand that there are like real valuable metrics. There are very obviously false metrics that are vanity metrics that never ever matter. But then there's this sort of group of metrics in the middle, metrics that we think matter but often don't. And I hear business owners coming back to me saying, well, I'm looking at this and I'm tracking this, really believing that it does matter. And I'm going to guess, as I see you sort of nodding, that you hear these things too. Can you give us a couple of examples of metrics that are probably not as valuable as many businesses think they are?
Sure. Yeah. You use the word vanity metric. That is one that we're constantly combating. So in the agency, that's one that we're constantly having to deal with. So like, shares, impression, reach, like all of these things, yeah, they make us feel great about whatever this campaign is that we're doing. But the question is, are those metrics actually leading to something else? Or are we actually using those metrics as a point of a formula to calculate the next step? Does that make sense? So like, reach is great. You can reach 10 million people. That's fabulous. I feel great about that. The question is, what is the next thing beyond the reach? Is that clicks to the website? Is that clicks to call? What's the next thing? So then when we run a calculation off of that, we had reached 10 million people, but that next step fell off to, whatever. That is where we begin revealing the data. That is where we actually start driving into and forcing these conversations around. We've got to let go of some of these vanity metrics that we try to hold on to. And so that is, I don't know if I answered the question, but that clearly is something that we deal with on a day in and day out basis.
Yeah. One of the things that we've encountered is that business will look at their numbers and think that they're doing really well when it comes to their cost of acquisition, and the lifetime value of that customer. However, they're missing the lead velocity, I think is the term that we use to describe this. And again, I'm not the metrics guy in my business, so I think I'm using the right words, which is that, right, you're getting the traffic, you're converting the traffic, but you're only getting like one every 4 months. And so it's not as valuable as you think it is. And that's where I think this sort of that metric in the middle, which is a false metric, right? You think that it's actually moving you forward, but you don't see the whole picture.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with that and see that. The other thing that we often see, which runs kind of parallel to what you're talking about, is that as you increase lead flow into a business, the systems required to process those leads correctly changes. And as you increase lead flow into a business, you also have to learn to deal with filtering people more quickly, right? So we work in some service-based businesses, some clients, and before they were dealing with X number per month of inquiries coming in. It's manageable. But when you double that or triple that, whatever the numbers are, and I'm not trying to sound like, massive numbers, but do you have the systems in place in the back end to deal with that? Do you have the systems in place as part of your marketing system to actually help filter those leads out? In other words, how do we separate? How do we lead score? Lead scoring is a big thing. How do we have a system, or do we have a system in place that enables us to do that quickly? So all of those metrics and all those things are so important. But again, if we're not careful, like you were saying, we get distracted or we get pulled in the wrong direction and start watching the wrong metrics.
Okay, so we started with assessing where they are now, right? Then we're looking at identifying the right metrics that are actually telling you whether you're being successful with what you're doing, or will be successful based on whatever we decide we need to put in place. So, what's number 3?
So, David, number 3, it's going to, for everybody listening, this is going to sound like the stupidest question possible. And it's going to sound like, why didn't we start with this question? Question number 3 is simply this: what is marketing? Now, when we ask somebody what is marketing, what we know from doing this time and time again is that most people confuse marketing and advertising. They consider these two things to be one and the same. And the reality is that advertising is merely a piece or a component of marketing. Now, that is so important for us and for what we do for this reason. We believe, and the way that we define marketing is this: marketing is your ability to attract and to keep a customer. So when we say that term, the way we like to view this is that, as marketers, so I'm a marketer, so I'm getting ready to call myself out. We can be very short-sighted. We believe that our job is to get people to pull out their wallet, hand us money, and then we can move on and go and find the next person to put in our funnel and do all the magic that we do and get them to pull out their wallet and repeat. But as marketers, when we take that mentality, when we have that approach, which to me, that's all about advertising. Yes, it's part of marketing, but we're focused on one little component. We're leaving so much on the table. We believe that when we say keep a customer, we don't mean just keep a customer and have them come back occasionally and buy from you. We mean turn them into evangelists for your product, your service, or your brand. That is the difference. And so when we ask that question, how do you define marketing? Where we're trying to get to with them is that marketing is about so much more than just getting people to the point of sale. We want your system, your marketing system, to be also about converting customers into evangelists for the brand.
I love these 3 questions because they seem, as you have suggested, so simple, so basic, and yet they're all very provocative once you actually push the answer a little bit further. And this last piece I like a lot because client retention is often dismissed or not thought about when it comes to marketing, but you're just marketing to a different person. You're not marketing to a new prospective client. You're marketing to an existing client to get them to stick around. And then you threw in the evangelist piece at the end, which probably means not only are they themselves going to continue to patronize your business, but that they're going to help you get others. I was, they used to use a different phrase, but the last couple of years, the folks over at, I don't even know what they call themselves anymore, Magnetic Marketing, GKIC, No BS, whatever they are, they've been using this phrase that I love, getting your customers, clients, or patients to pay, stay, and refer. And that's exactly what you just talked about, and I love that.
Yeah, that is it. Does the name Joe Girard ring a bell to you, David?
Absolutely.
Okay, so Joe Girard, for anybody who's not familiar with the name, Joe Girard holds the Guinness Book of World Records. I think it's actually for the world's greatest car salesman.
Salesman, not just cars.
Salesman, okay.
Yeah.
But for those who don't know the way Joe did this, so in a 15-year career as a car salesman, Joe sold just over 12,000 automobiles to people, no fleet sales, all one-on-one sales. But Joe was smart enough to know that Joe's job is not just to make the sale. Joe's job was to turn those customers into what, again, I would call evangelists for him. So every single month, every single person who had ever bought a car from Joe got a card in the mail from Joe. So Joe wasn't selling cars. Joe was building an army of evangelists for himself. And the results speak for themselves. We see the same today with businesses who embrace this mentality, who embrace the idea that every human being on this planet just about now has this little device in their pocket or purse that can broadcast messages literally to the world. And yet we as marketers have been so slow to shift our thinking and to begin thinking about what am I going to do post sale to take these people and turn them into the ultimate, what I'd say the most powerful marketing tool you have, other people out there sharing about your product, your service, or your brand.
And I know that you work with a wide spectrum of business types, and each of those business types probably has their own unique way of building this into their business. I wonder if you have any interesting or helpful examples of how to kind of work this connection, affinity, evangelist molding,
Yeah, yeah,
um, you
yeah.
know, uh, into a business.
Yeah, absolutely. So I apologize up front. I'm terrible at short answers, but this is the way I would answer that question to a client. I would say, okay, step one, we're going to pull out your P&L. We're going to look at the marketing line or the advertising line item on your P&L. And then whatever that figure is, $1,000, $10,000, $100,000, it doesn't matter. What percentage of that money is spent on attracting people versus keeping and converting people? That's question number one I'm going to go to. And we've done this time and time again. The answer comes back, it's way over 90% gets spent on finding new people. And yet all the data, we all know this, all the data says that it's far cheaper, far easier to resell previous customers than to go find new customers. So that's one kind of big caveat piece that I would say. The other thing is this, that we as entrepreneurs deceive ourselves very easily. Bain and Company did this study where they went around and surveyed almost 4,000 small business owners in America. And they gave them 5 options. They said, okay, which level of service do you provide to your customers? Top answer, the highest level was superior service. The next one was good service. The next one was average service. The next one was bad service. And then the last one was like horrible or horrific or whatever it was. And so they go survey all these business owners, and the data comes back and says 80% of those companies they surveyed said that they provide superior service. Well, the people at Bain and Company are smart enough to say something's not right here. 80% of these companies provide superior service. And so what they then did is got permission from those companies to go out and talk to the actual customers. And those customers of those same exact companies that they surveyed, when given that same question with the same 5 rating system, only 8% rated those companies as providing superior service. So all of that, the long answer to your short question is this. If we're not careful, we tend to believe that we are constantly and consistently exceeding expectations. The reality is that more than often, we are barely meeting expectations. And so until we get clear on what a reasonable human being has the right to expect in working with us, we have zero hope of consistently exceeding those expectations. And the core ingredient, regardless of industry, to convert a customer into an evangelist is love. And what I mean by that is they have to clearly love our product or service or our brand so much that they're willing to go share. And that love is fostered when we've clearly and unmistakably exceeded their expectations.
I've heard the word love used once before in the definition of marketing, and it was something, I'm not getting it exactly right, but it was something along the lines of getting the right people to love you.
Mm,
And
yeah.
I think that, if you then pull back and you understand everything that you've just said, that pretty well encapsulates it, is that the right people to love you, meaning the right sort of relationship with your business. So I'm glad that you pulled that word out of wherever you pulled it from. Anyway, we're short on time, and I want to make sure that folks know how to find you and learn more about you. And so, as I was sitting here looking at your website and thinking, oh, they do speaking. Well, I'm assuming you're the speaker because you're quite good at it. But then I scrolled down that page and I saw the word workshops. And so, before we wrap up, I'm curious to hear a little bit about the work that you do going into companies, working with their teams.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we did a lot more of that, obviously, pre-COVID days. We were on the ground a lot more. And really what we do is we come in, and it varies based on client, but we attempt to, in a very short period of time, help them build a system around their marketing. And we use a very simple framework that we use that basically it's a full circle. So in other words, it's not just about attracting, but it's also about keeping customers on the other side. David, and I know just based on conversation with you that you'll appreciate this, that so often when we work with people, what they've done is they've attempted to string together a bunch of tactics, and it is a system, but it's a terrible system. It's an anemic, weak system, and they're frustrated because they've spent all this time, all this money stringing these different tactics together with little to show for it. And what I believe to be true is that we all need in businesses frameworks, strategies, and tactics, particularly as it relates to marketing. Because if not, we are at the whim of the latest ad rep who walks in the door, or the latest influencer or guru who's on social or wherever pitching this new amazing thing that they've done. And instead, all the while, I guess, our results are diminishing, our results are anemic, and we're frustrated.
It is so true. I think as entrepreneurs, we all experience that and get distracted by somebody who is either trying to sell us something or sell us on something. And when you just go back to the basics and you understand those three things you mentioned, right? Tactic, strategies, and framework, which was a you threw that word in there at the last minute, and we have to dive into that probably on our next conversation together.
Yeah.
But I'm so happy that this conversation's brought an opportunity for me to connect with who is somebody who's clearly a kindred spirit, because everything you said, I believe, and you didn't convert me to it. I learned it all before, and so the beard and the long hair and stuff. It's just I don't know what you're going for with that look. It's not an ugly mug. It's a very attractive one. So there you go. Anyway, Wayne, where can people find you and find out more about you?
The simplest place, David, is on our website. That's just uglymugmarketing.com.
Excellent. I'll make sure that there's a link in the show notes as well. Wayne Mullins, thank you so very much. This has been a real fun conversation.
Thank you so much, David. I loved it. Enjoyed the conversation.
All right. Folks, you've been listening to More Perfect Marketing. I hope to have the opportunity to see you back here once again real soon. Take care.